A barefoot child in front of a fancy restaurant didn't bother anyone, until she spoke. She wasn't asking for charity, but for dignity. She wanted to work for a meal. The man who heard her saw a world of hidden injustices where luxury drowns out suffering. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. The fine drizzle of New York City transformed the streets of downtown into a grey mirror that reflected the lights of restaurants and shops. It was a June afternoon, one of those that make New Yorkers huddle inside their coats and quicken their pace. On Fifth Avenue, amid the hurried movement of pedestrians, a small figure walked slowly, almost imperceptible to the eyes of the adults passing by. Emma was only 6 years old, but her eyes carried a sadness that didn't match childhood. Her bare feet touched the cold asphalt, leaving small wet footprints that soon disappeared with the rain. The faded blue dress, which had once belonged to another child, hung loosely on her thin little body. Her stomach had been growling for hours, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since the previous morning. She stopped in front of the Garden restaurant, one of the most elegant in the area. Through the foggy window, she observed tables covered with immaculate white tablecloths, gleaming silverware, and plates full of food that looked like works of art. Well-dressed men and women chatted animatedly while savoring their meals, oblivious to the world outside. The aroma of mushroom risotto and grilled salmon escaped each time the door opened, making Emma close her eyes and imagine the taste of that food. Her small hands pressed against her empty stomach, trying to silence the noises coming from within. It was then that the door opened again, and an elegant man came out of the restaurant. Richard Morgan, at 45, was one of the most respected businessmen in New York. Owner of a chain of restaurants that spread throughout the country, he wore an impeccable Italian suit and adjusted his Swiss watch as he walked toward his car. Emma observed him for a few seconds, gathering courage. Something about that man conveyed a different feeling from the other adults who passed by her, pretending not to see her. Perhaps it was the way he moved, unhurriedly. Or perhaps it was just the desperation of hunger that made her try one more time. With hesitant steps, she approached. Richard was putting the key in the car when he felt a presence beside him. Looking down, he found the large, dark eyes of a girl who barely reached his waist. "Mister," said Emma with a soft but firm voice, "do you need someone to wash dishes in your restaurant?" Richard was surprised. It wasn't common to see children alone in that area, much less asking this kind of question. He bent down to her height, noticing her bare and injured feet. "What do you mean, little one?" he asked, genuinely intrigued. "I know how to wash dishes very well," Emma continued, without averting her gaze. "I can clean tables too. You don't have to pay me with money, just with a plate of food." The simplicity and dignity of that proposal touched something deep in Richard. He looked again at the girl's feet and noticed small cuts that were still bleeding slightly. His expression became more serious. "Where are your parents? Why are you alone here?" Emma lowered her eyes for the first time. "My mum, she had to go away. And I took a bread from a bakery because I was very hungry. Mr. Joe the baker got really mad and said I had to learn my lesson." "What lesson?" Richard felt a tightness in his chest. "He took my shoes and said each step would hurt until I never forgot that I can't take things from others." Richard felt a wave of indignation and sadness he hadn't experienced in years. His life had become a routine of meetings, numbers, and profits. It had been a long time since he had faced such a raw and, at the same time, such a human reality. "Are you hungry?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Emma nodded her head, trying not to show how desperate she was. "Come with me," said Richard, extending his hand. "Let's take a look at those feet of yours, and then you can help me inside." Emma hesitated for a moment. Adults always promised things they didn't fulfill, but there was something in that man's voice that inspired confidence. She accepted the outstretched hand and followed Richard back to the restaurant. The movement inside the Garden was intense. Waiters circulated among the tables with steaming plates, while the sound of conversations and laughter filled the environment. Some customers looked curiously at the unusual pair that had just entered. "Megan," Richard called to the restaurant manager, a middle-aged woman with a permanent professional smile. "I need a first aid kit and a clean towel." Megan Carter frowned when she saw Emma. "Mr. Morgan, what's going on?" "I'll explain later. For now, bring what I asked for." Richard took Emma to a reserved table at the back of the restaurant, away from the curious eyes of other customers. Carefully, he cleaned the wounds on the girl's feet and applied a mild disinfectant. "Does it hurt?" he asked as he placed small bandages. "Just a little bit," answered Emma, impressed by the man's gentleness. "Thank you, mister. You can call me Richard. And you, what's your name?" "Emma." "Emma. What a beautiful name. Now how about we eat something while we talk about this dishwashing job?" Emma's eyes lit up. Richard made a sign to the waiter and ordered a plate of pasta with tomato sauce, warm bread, and a glass of orange juice. When the food arrived, Emma ate slowly, savoring each forkful as if it were the most delicious in the world. Richard observed her in silence, feeling a mixture of emotions he couldn't define. "Emma, where did you sleep last night?" he asked carefully. "In a cardboard box near the square. But don't worry, it's not far from here. I can come to work every day." The determination in the girl's voice deeply touched Richard. This child, who barely had enough to survive, was offering her work in exchange for food, keeping her dignity intact. "You know what we're going to do," said Richard, making a decision that would change their lives forever. "Tomorrow you come back here in the morning. I'll arrange a tiny uniform for you, and we'll see how you do helping in the kitchen." Emma smiled for the first time since Richard had met her. It was a shy but genuine smile. "Really? You won't change your mind?" "I promise I won't. But now I need to arrange a better place for you to sleep tonight." Richard made some calls and secured a spot in a temporary shelter for children. He himself took Emma there, ensuring she would be well cared for during the night. "Tomorrow at 8 o'clock I'll be at the door," said Emma before entering the shelter. "I'll be waiting," replied Richard. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. The image of Emma's injured feet and the way she had offered her work with such dignity wouldn't leave his mind. He got up and went to the window of his luxurious apartment, observing the city lights. For years, he had built a gastronomic empire, accumulating wealth and prestige. But he had never felt so touched by something as he had that afternoon. A 6-year-old girl had managed to awaken feelings in him that he thought he had lost a long time ago. Richard didn't know it yet, but that encounter would mark the beginning of a transformation that would change not only his life, but also the lives of many other people. Little Emma, with her simplicity and determination, was about to teach a millionaire lessons that no business school could ever offer. The next morning, Richard arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. By 7:30, he was already at the door, anxious to see if Emma would keep her promise. He didn't have to wait long. Exactly at 8 o'clock, a small figure appeared at the corner. Emma walked with her feet still bandaged, but with a smile on her face. In her hands, she carried an old cloth and an improvised container she used as a bucket. "Good morning, Mr. Richard," she said, making a small curtsy. "I brought my work tools." Richard smiled, feeling his heart warmed by the seriousness and professionalism of that extraordinary child. He couldn't imagine that this was just the beginning of a story that would test his humanity and transform his understanding of what really matters in life. Emma's first weeks at the Garden restaurant were like watching a small miracle happen every day. Richard had prepared a special corner in the kitchen with a wooden stool so she could reach the smaller sink that he had ordered to be installed. The girl arrived punctually at 8 in the morning, always with her old cloth and improvised container, as if they were the most valuable instruments in the world. "Good morning, team," Emma would say with her sweet voice upon entering the kitchen, greeting all the employees. Some smiled back, others just nodded, but all had gotten used to the presence of the little worker. Carl, the head chef, a large man with more than 20 years of experience, was the first to surrender to Emma's charm. "Oh, child, you wash these dishes better than many adults out there," he would say as she carefully rinsed each utensil. "It's because I like what I do, Mr. Carl," Emma would respond, always focused on her task. "My mum always said that when we do things with love, they turn out more beautiful." The mention of her mother always brought a shadow of sadness to Emma's eyes, but she quickly returned to concentrating on her work. Richard noticed these moments and felt a pang in his heart. He had tried several times to ask more about the girl's mother, but Emma always changed the subject or just said that she had to go away to a far place. Richard began to teach more elaborate techniques to Emma. He showed her how to organize utensils by size, how to clean without wasting water, how to identify when a plate was really clean. The girl absorbed each teaching with a thirst for knowledge that impressed everyone. "Mr. Richard, why does this plate have this design on the edge?" she would ask. examining a piece of French porcelain. That's called a gold fillet. It's a very old, decorative technique. It comes from France, Richard would explain, surprising himself with his own patience for teaching. Is France far from here? Emma's eyes would sparkle with curiosity. Very far, across the ocean. One day I'll visit France, declared Emma, with the conviction that only children possess. I'll learn how to make those gold designs on plates. Richard smiled, but something in his chest tightened. He looked at that brilliant girl and imagined all the opportunities she could have if circumstances were different. However, not everyone viewed Emma's presence favorably. Megan, the manager, began to show her discomfort in an increasingly open manner. "Mr. Morgan, I need to speak with you," she said one day, pulling Richard to a corner. "Customers are starting to comment about the girl in the kitchen." "Comment about what?" Richard frowned. "Well, some find it inappropriate. A restaurant of our caliber having a street child working here." "Street child?" Richard felt irritation rising. "She has a name, Megan. It's Emma, and she's not bothering anyone. Mr. Morgan, I understand your generosity, but we need to think about the establishment's image. Yesterday, Mrs. Beverly Almeida, you know, the congressman's wife, asked if we were exploiting child labor." Richard took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. "And what did you answer?" "That it was a temporary situation, of course, but sir, honestly, we can't continue like this. What will our VIP clients think, our investors?" That night, Richard stayed at the restaurant later, watching Emma finish her tasks. The girl was humming softly as she dried the last plates, completely oblivious to the conversations about her. "Emma, can I ask you a question?" said Richard, sitting beside her. "Of course, Mr. Richard. Are you happy here?" Emma stopped drying the plate and looked at him with surprise. "Very happy. This is the most beautiful place I've ever seen, and you are all very kind to me." "Even when some people aren't so kind?" Emma lowered her eyes. "I know some people don't like me here, but I work very well, don't I? I don't break anything, I don't make a mess." "You work better than many adults," Richard reassured her. "It's not about your work, Emma. It's about people having prejudice." "Prejudice?" "It's when people judge other people without really knowing them, just by their appearance or the situation they're in." Emma was thoughtful for a moment. "My mom always said that it's what's in people's hearts that matters, not the clothes they wear. Your mom was a very wise woman." "She was," Emma smiled sadly. "She always said that one day she would come back for me. That she was just doing something very important." Richard felt a lump in his throat. "Tell me more about your mom." "Her name is Hannah. She's the most beautiful woman in the world." Emma's eyes shone. "She worked helping other people. She always said it was important to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." "What kind of work did she do?" "I don't know exactly, but she always talked about children who needed help. She said there were bad people who hurt children, and that she had to do something to protect them." A chill ran down Richard's spine. "Emma, how long since you've seen your mom?" "It's been many days." The girl's voice got lower. "Some people came to our home and said she was sick, that she needed to go to a special place to get better. But she wasn't sick, Mr. Richard. She was fine." "What kind of people?" "Some women in white, very serious. They said they were doctors and that they would take good care of Mommy. But Mommy didn't want to go. She screamed that she wasn't sick, that she had important things to do." Richard felt a shiver. The story wasn't making sense. "And then?" "Then they took Mommy away. One of them stayed with me and said I was going to a nice place with other children. But it wasn't nice." Emma's voice trembled. "It was an ugly place, with bars. The other children cried a lot." "How did you get out of there?" "I ran away. It was very bad there, Mr. Richard. They made us work a lot, almost didn't give us food. And when someone got sick, they disappeared." "Disappeared how?" "Just disappeared. They said they had gone to another place, but they never came back." Richard hugged Emma, feeling a mixture of protection and outrage. "You're safe now, little one. I won't let anyone hurt you. Promise?" "I promise." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. Emma's story disturbed him deeply. He had assumed she was just an abandoned child, but now he realized there was much more behind her situation. The next day, Richard arrived at the restaurant determined to discover more about Emma's past. But when he arrived, He found Megan waiting for him with a tense expression. "Mr. Morgan, we need to talk urgently," she said, taking him to the office. "What is it now, Megan?" "Last night after you left, 2 women appeared here asking about a child. They described Emma exactly." Richard felt his blood freeze. "What kind of women?" "They claimed to be social workers. Very polite, very well dressed. They had documents and everything. They said Emma was a child who had run away from a protection institution." "And what did you say?" "That we didn't know anything, obviously. But sir, if she really ran away from a shelter—" "It wasn't a shelter, Megan. It was something much worse." "What do you mean?" Richard took a deep breath. "Emma told me some things yesterday. She was forcibly taken from her mother and brought to a place where they made children work in precarious conditions." "Mr. Morgan, those are children's stories. Maybe she made them up to arouse our pity." "No," Richard was categorical. "Emma doesn't lie. There's something very wrong with this whole story." At that moment, Carl appeared at the office door with a worried expression. "Mr. Richard, the girl didn't show up today. It's almost 9 o'clock." Richard felt his heart race. Emma never delayed. In 3 weeks, she hadn't missed a single day. "Do you know where she sleeps?" asked Carl. "She said she found a better place after she started working here," said Megan. "But she never said where." Richard grabbed his car keys. "I'm going to look for her." He spent the entire day driving around downtown, asking about Emma at every corner, in every square. He spoke with homeless people, with merchants, with anyone who might have seen the girl. "Ah, the tiny girl who worked at the fancy restaurant?" said an old man who sold flowers on the corner. "I saw her yesterday, early morning. She was with 2 very elegant women. I thought it was something good." "What time was that?" "Very early, around 6 in the morning. The girl didn't seem very happy, but the women said they were her aunt." Richard felt his legs weaken. The same women who had looked for Emma at the restaurant had found her. He returned to the garden in the late afternoon, devastated. The kitchen seemed empty without Emma's cheerful presence. Her stool was there, abandoned, as well as her old cloth and the container she used as a bucket. "I'm going to the police," said Richard to Megan. "Mr. Morgan, maybe it's better not to get involved anymore. If she really ran away from an official institution—" "I don't care," Richard interrupted her. "A 6-year-old child doesn't just disappear like that. I'm going to find out what happened to her." Richard went to the nearest police station, but the reception was cold. "Sir, street children disappear all the time," said the detective with indifference. "She probably went back to her family or to another shelter." "But she worked with me, I know her. She wouldn't leave without saying goodbye." "Look, I'll make a note here, but don't get your hopes up too much. These children are unstable. Here today, gone tomorrow." Richard left the police station outraged. He couldn't accept that a child would be treated as if she were disposable. Emma had a name, had a personality, had dreams. She wanted to visit France and learn how to make gold fillets on plates. That night, alone in his apartment, Richard made a decision that would change his life forever. He couldn't simply return to his routine as if nothing had happened. Emma had awakened in him something he thought he had lost a long time ago, the ability to truly care about another human being. The next morning, Richard made a call he had avoided making for years. The call Richard made that morning was to Edward Santos, a private investigator who had worked for him years ago on a delicate corporate matter. Edward was a discreet, efficient, and above all, trustworthy man. "Richard, what a surprise. I thought you had forgotten about me," said Edward with a friendly tone. "I need your help, Edward. It's urgent." "Go ahead." Richard told the whole story of Emma, from their first meeting to her disappearance. Edward listened in silence, making occasional notes. "This has the look of an organized network," said Edward after hearing everything. "Children being removed from their families under false pretenses, forced labor. It's more common than you might imagine." "What do you mean?" "There are schemes that take advantage of vulnerable children. They use fake documentation, pose as social workers, gain the trust of local authorities. It's a lucrative and well-structured business." "But how can this happen? Aren't there inspections?" "There are, but those responsible are clever. They maintain a legal facade, have documents in order, pay the right people to look the other way. And when someone tries to report it, what happens? They silence the person, sometimes with money, sometimes with threats. In extreme cases, they claim the person has mental problems and have them committed." Richard felt a chill down his spine. Like Emma's mother, Exactly. If she discovered something and tried to report it, she was probably neutralized that way. Can you investigate? I can, but it will be dangerous. These people don't play around. There's a lot of money involved and protection in high places. I don't care about the cost. I want Emma back. Edward sighed. All right. But we'll have to be very careful. Give me a few days to map out the situation. While Edward began his investigation, Richard tried to maintain the routine at the restaurant, but it was impossible. Emma's absence was everywhere. Her empty stool, the plates she washed with such care, even the more restrained smile of the employees who had grown fond of the girl. "Mr. Richard, are you okay?" asked Carl, noticing his boss's dejected state. "I'm worried about Emma, Carl. So I'm sure something bad happened to her." "That girl was really special," said Carl, shaking his head. "I've never seen such a responsible and polite child. I hope she's okay." Megan, on the other hand, seemed relieved by Emma's absence. "Mr. Morgan, maybe it's better this way. Now we can get back to normal." "Normal?" Richard stared at her harshly. "A child has disappeared, Megan. That's not normal." "Sir, with all due respect, the girl wasn't our responsibility. We did our part by being kind to her." "Kind?" Richard felt anger rising. "Emma worked here, Megan. She was part of our team, and you're talking as if she were a pet that ran away." Megan lowered her eyes, realizing she had crossed a line. "I'm sorry, sir. That's not what I meant." "I think you should reconsider your values," said Richard before retreating to his office. 3 days later, Edward called with the first information. "Richard, I've got some interesting data. Can you meet me tonight? Discreet place." They met at a small bar in Brooklyn Heights, away from the curious eyes of downtown. Edward arrived with a folder full of documents and photographs. "What did you find out?" asked Richard anxiously. "First, about Emma's mother. Hannah Christine Summers, 28 years old, social worker, graduated from NYU. She worked at an NGO that investigated violations of children's rights." So Emma was right. Her mother wasn't sick. Not only was she not sick, but she was also messing with dangerous people. 6 months ago, she began investigating the disappearance of street children in the central region. She discovered evidence that there was a child trafficking scheme. Trafficking, not sexual, thank God, forced labor. They take the children to farms in the countryside, where they work in conditions analogous to slavery. Charcoal production, sugar cane harvesting, that sort of thing. Richard swallowed hard. And Hannah tried to report it? She tried, but she couldn't reach the competent authorities. Someone intercepted her first. The women who took her and Emma? Edward showed some photographs. "Do you recognize any of them?" Richard examined the photos. They were middle-aged women, very well-dressed, with a professional appearance. "No, but Megan said women like this appeared at the restaurant looking for Emma. They pose as social workers or psychologists. They have very well-made fake documents. They can convince even police officers that they're doing legitimate work." "How did you discover all this?" "I have contacts in various places, and Hannah wasn't the only one to disappear. There are at least 3 other similar cases in recent months. People who were investigating the same scheme. Where are they now?" "Committed to private psychiatric clinics, officially psychotic break. In practice, drugged with medications to keep them in a vegetative state." Richard felt nauseous. "This is monstrous." "It's a very well-organized business, Richard. They remove the children from the families, commit the relatives who might cause problems, and then exploit child labor away from urban centers. They profit in 2 ways: free labor and government subsidies for taking care of the children." "Do you know where the children are?" "I have some clues. It seems there's a farm in the Riverdale area, in the countryside. Officially, it's a rehabilitation center for juvenile offenders. In practice, it's a forced labor camp." "Exactly. And there's more. The farm owner, August Ferris, has very strong political connections. Congressmen, judges, prosecutors. It won't be easy to bring him down." Richard was silent for a few minutes, processing all the information. "Edward, I want to rescue Emma." "Richard, this is very dangerous. We're talking about a criminal organization with official protection." "I don't care. I can't leave that girl in the hands of these monsters." Edward sighed. "If you're determined to do this, we'll need a very well-elaborated plan. And we'll need help." "What kind of help?" "First, we need to get Emma's mother out of the clinic. She may have valuable information. Second, we need someone in the press who has the courage to publish the exposé. Do you know anyone? I do. Andrea Morris, investigative journalist. She's done several articles on corruption and human rights. She's brave and has integrity. When can we start? I'll need a few more days to map the security of the clinic where Hannah is committed. As for the farm, it's more complicated. I'll have to find a way to confirm if Emma is really there. Do whatever is necessary. Edward put the documents back in the folder. Richard, are you sure about this? If we take a wrong step, bad things can happen. Not just to you, but to me too. I'm sure. That girl trusted me. She offered work in exchange for food, and I let her into my life. Now she's part of my family. Family? Yes, family. Emma taught me things I had forgotten. She showed me that there is goodness in the world, that it's possible to maintain dignity even in the worst situation. She saved me from my own coldness. Edward smiled for the first time that night. All right, let's bring your daughter back. My daughter? By the way you talk about her, that's what she is to you. Richard felt a warmth in his chest. Edward was right. At some point, without him realizing it, Emma had become more than an employee or a protégé. She had become his daughter in his heart. Let's bring my daughter back, repeated Richard with determination. In the following days, Edward worked tirelessly to gather more information. He discovered that the clinic where Hannah was committed had a nurse named Lucy, who was suspicious of the methods used with some patients. She could be our ally, said Edward in a new conversation. Lucy noticed that some patients are being medicated beyond what's necessary. She suspects something is wrong. Can we trust her? I'll do some tests first, but from what I've investigated, she seems to be a person of integrity. Edward also managed to confirm that there was a weekly transport of children from the central region to the farm in Riverdale. Every Tuesday, a white van leaves the city, taking the children for what they call an educational visit. Educational visit? That's the official excuse. They say they take the children to learn about rural work, to reconnect with nature. In reality, it's when they select those who will stay on the farm. Richard felt his blood boil. When is the next Tuesday? In 3 days. Then we have 3 days to put our plan together. Edward nodded. I'll make contact with Lucy and with the journalist Andrea. If all goes well, next week we'll have Hannah free and enough evidence to bring down the entire network. And if it doesn't go well? I prefer not to think about that, said Edward with a tense smile. Richard spent the next few days in growing anxiety. At the restaurant he tried to maintain normalcy, but everyone noticed that something was different. Carl even asked if he was sick. I'm fine, Carl. Just worried about some things. If it has to do with the girl Emma, you know you can count on me, right? Richard was moved by the employee's demonstration of loyalty. Thank you, Carl. That means a lot to me. Megan, on the other hand, seemed increasingly uncomfortable with Richard's behavior. Mr. Morgan, the suppliers are complaining that you're not approving the orders. You've cancelled 3 scheduled meetings. Reschedule everything, Megan. I have more important issues to resolve. More important than the business? Richard stopped what he was doing and looked directly at Megan. Yes, Megan, there are things more important than money. On the eve of the operation, Edward called with the final instructions. Tomorrow at 6 in the morning, Lucy and I will get Hannah out of the clinic. At 10, you meet us at the agreed point. At noon, we intercept the van with the children. And if something goes wrong? Richard, if something goes wrong, we'll probably all have serious problems. Are you sure you want to continue? Richard looked out the window of his apartment, seeing the lights of the city that had become his home. Somewhere out there, Emma was suffering, far from everything she knew. The girl who had offered her work with such dignity, who talked about France and gold-edged plates, who hummed while washing dishes. I'm sure, said Richard with a firm voice. Let's go get our girl. The plan began to be executed at dawn that Tuesday. At 5 in the morning, Edward was positioned in the vicinity of Wellness Clinic, a private psychiatric institution located in the southern zone of New York. Lucy, the nurse who had become his ally, had already been preparing everything internally for 2 hours. Dr. Mendez isn't coming today, said Lucy on the cell phone, using the code they had arranged. The patient in room 237 is ready for discharge. Edward understood the message. The doctor responsible for Hannah would not be at the clinic, and she was conscious enough to be removed. In the last few days, Lucy had gradually reduced Hannah's medication dosage, simulating an improvement in her condition. "I'm coming," replied Edward. Dressed in a dark suit and carrying a clipboard, Edward passed through the clinic's reception as if he were just another doctor. Lucy was waiting for him in the hallway, nervous but determined. "She's in room 237. She's weak, but lucid," whispered Lucy. "We have at most 10 minutes before the shift change." Edward followed through the psychiatric ward, passing locked doors from which occasional moans and murmurs came. The environment was depressing, with the smell of disinfectant and a sense of abandonment that gave him chills. Hannah was sitting on the bed looking out the window. At 28, she looked 40. Her brown hair was disheveled, and her eyes, though alert, carried a deep sadness. When she saw Edward enter, she was startled. "Who are you?" she asked with a weak voice. "My name is Edward Santos. I'm a private investigator. I've come to get you out of here." "I don't understand." "Your daughter Emma is in danger. I need your help to save her." Upon hearing her daughter's name, Hannah quickly stood up, stumbling a bit. "Emma, where is she? What have they done to my daughter?" "Calm down, Hannah. I'll explain everything, but first we need to get out of here." Edward helped Hannah dress in the clothes Lucy had provided. In a few minutes, they were walking through the clinic's corridors toward the exit. "Dr. Summers has been discharged," said Lucy to the security guard at the reception, showing falsified papers. "Transfer for home treatment." The guard barely looked at the documents. "It's okay, you can go." Once in the car, Edward drove silently for a few miles, constantly checking the rearview mirror to make sure they weren't being followed. Hannah was beside him, still confused, but increasingly alert. "Now explain to me what's happening," she said when they stopped at a gas station. Edward told the whole story, how Emma had appeared at Richard's restaurant, how she had worked there for weeks, and how she had disappeared. He told about the investigation he had conducted, and about the child trafficking network that Hannah had discovered. "I knew this would happen," said Hannah, with tears in her eyes. "I was so close to proving everything. I had names, dates, locations, but they got me before I could deliver the evidence." "What evidence?" "Documents, recordings, photos. I had infiltrated a source into the organization itself. A woman who regretted what she was doing and decided to help me. Where is this evidence?" "Hidden. In a place that only Emma and I know." Edward looked at the clock. "We have to go. Richard is waiting for us." They headed to an abandoned warehouse in the eastern zone, where Richard was anxiously waiting. When he saw Hannah get out of the car, he ran to help her. "Hannah, I'm Richard Morgan. Emma worked in my restaurant. Thank you for taking care of my daughter," said Hannah, holding Richard's hands. "Is she okay?" "She was fine when she was with me," replied Richard, trying not to show his concern. "Now I need to bring her back." Hannah straightened up, showing a strength that didn't seem possible a few minutes before. "Then let's go get my daughter." Edward explained the next phase of the plan. "Soon a van will leave the central region taking children to the farm. We'll intercept it at a point on the highway where there's no movement." "And then?" asked Richard. "Then we'll have to improvise. But first, Hannah, I need you to tell me about this evidence." Hannah was thoughtful for a moment. "Emma and I lived in an abandoned building downtown. In the basement, there's an old safe. All the documents are there. Can we recover them?" "Yes, but it will be dangerous. They're certainly watching the place." Edward consulted his watch again. "We have time. Let's first intercept the van, then recover the evidence." They headed to the Westchester Expressway to the point Edward had chosen for the interception. It was a straight stretch, with little movement, ideal for forcing a stop without attracting attention. "Here comes the van," said Edward, pointing to a white vehicle that was approaching. Richard felt his heart race. In a few seconds, he might see Emma again, or the plan could go wrong, and they could be discovered. Edward positioned his car to partially block the lane, forcing the van to slow down. When the vehicle stopped, he approached the driver, pretending to be a police officer. "Documents, please," he said, showing a fake badge. The driver, a man of about 50, handed over the documents nervously. "Is something wrong, officer?" "Routine inspection. Can I take a look at the cargo?" "It's not cargo, officer. They're children. We are taking them for an educational trip." Edward signaled to Richard, who approached the side of the van. Through the windows, he could see several children sitting on improvised benches, and there, in the back, was Emma. The girl was thinner than before, with dirty clothes and a sad look, but when she saw Richard, her eyes lit up. Mr. Richard, she shouted, hitting the glass. The driver realized something was wrong. Hey, you're not police officers! Edward quickly subdued the driver while Richard opened the van's rear doors. Emma, are you okay? Mr. Richard, I knew you would find me. Emma ran into Richard's arms, who hugged her tightly. I'm here, little one. Now you're safe. The other children in the van were frightened, but when they saw Hannah appear, some recognized her. Aunt Hannah, you disappeared, said a boy of about 8 years. I'm here now, Johnny. We're going to get you out of this place. Edward had tied up the driver and taken his cell phone. We have to go. Soon they'll realize the van didn't reach its destination. They transferred all the children to the cars Edward had arranged. There were 8 children in total, all between 6 and 12 years old, all with the same expression of abandonment and fear. Where are we going now? Asked Hannah. To the building where you lived, said Edward. We need the evidence. The abandoned building was on a deserted street in the historic downtown. It was an old commercial building that had been vacated years ago. Hannah guided the group to the basement, where there was an old safe embedded in the wall. Emma helped me hide everything here, said Hannah, opening the safe with a combination. She was the only one who knew besides me. Mommy, I told Mr. Richard about the bad people, said Emma. He said he would protect me. And I'll continue to protect you, said Richard, caressing the girl's hair. Hannah removed from the safe a thick folder with documents, photos, and a flash drive. Here's everything. Names, addresses, payment schemes, transport routes. Everything we need to bring down the network. Edward quickly examined the documents. This is gold, Hannah. With this evidence, we can not only save these children, but also free hundreds of others. What do we do now? Asked Richard. Now we go to the journalist, said Edward. Andrea Morris is waiting in a safe house. We'll deliver everything to her and let her do the work. They headed to a house in the Upper West Side, where Andrea Morris, a 35-year-old journalist with red hair and determined eyes, was waiting for them with a camera crew. Richard, she said, extending her hand. Edward told me about you, and this must be the famous Emma. Emma hid behind Richard, still distrustful of unknown adults. Mr. Richard, who is she? She's a friend, Emma. She's going to help us tell the truth to everyone. Hannah handed the documents to Andrea, who examined them with increasing astonishment. This is amazing, Hannah. You have evidence that can bring down dozens of people, congressmen, judges, businessmen. That's why they tried to silence me, said Hannah. But they didn't succeed. Andrea began to record the testimonies. Hannah told how she had discovered the network, how she had been forcibly committed, how Emma had been taken. Richard told about his meeting with Emma, about the weeks she worked at the restaurant, about her disappearance. And you, Emma? Asked Andrea with a soft voice. Can you tell me what happened? Emma looked at Richard, who nodded encouragingly. The bad women took me to an ugly place. They made us work a lot, didn't give enough food. I just wanted to go back to Mr. Richard's restaurant. Why did you want to go back to the restaurant? Because there I was important. I washed the dishes and everyone liked me. Mr. Richard taught me new things, and I was going to visit France one day. Andrea was moved by the simplicity and strength of the girl. Do you still want to visit France, Emma? I do. And I'll learn how to make gold designs on plates like Mr. Richard taught me. The recordings lasted hours. Each child told their story. Hannah provided technical details of the investigation. Edward explained how he had discovered the network. Richard talked about how Emma had transformed his life. This story will air tomorrow morning, said Andrea. But you need to be prepared. The reaction will be violent. Violent how? Asked Richard. These people won't simply accept the exposure. They'll try to silence you, discredit the story, maybe even use force. Edward nodded. That's why we're going to separate. Richard, you take Emma and Hannah to a safe place. I'll stay here with Andrea to ensure the story is published. No, said Richard. I won't leave you alone. Richard, you have a daughter to protect now, said Hannah, looking at Emma. Your responsibility is to her. Mommy is right, said Emma, taking Richard's hand. I need you. Richard looked at the girl and felt a wave of protection he had never experienced before. All right, but as soon as the story is published, we'll meet again. Promise, said Edward. They embraced, knowing that the next few hours would be decisive. Richard took Emma, Hannah, and the other children to a discreet hotel in the greater New York area, where they would wait for events to unfold. Mr. Richard, said Emma when they were already at the hotel, will you still let me work at the restaurant? Of course, little one. You're part of the family. Family. Yes, Emma. You, your mother, and me. We're a family now. Emma smiled, finally relaxing after days of tension. I like this family. Hannah embraced Richard with tears in her eyes. Thank you for saving my daughter. Thank you for giving us a new chance. Thank you for teaching me what really matters in life, replied Richard. Outside, the city continued its normal routine, not knowing that the next morning a revelation would shake its structures. But there, in that hotel room, 3 people who had met through the most unlikely circumstances discovered they had formed a family based on love, courage, and justice. The battle was far from over, but they had already won the most important part. They had proven that human kindness can overcome any adversity. Andrea Morris's story aired at 6 in the morning on the city's main news channel. The title was devastating. Child Trafficking Network: How Vulnerable Children Were Exploited by Businessmen and Politicians. The report showed documents, recordings, and testimonies that proved the existence of a scheme that involved corrupt social workers up to state representatives. In the hotel where they were staying, Richard, Hannah, and Emma watched the report in silence. With each revelation, Hannah nodded, confirming the facts. Emma was leaning against Richard, finally understanding the dimension of what had happened to her. Mr. Richard, now everyone will know the truth, asked Emma. Yes, little one. Now no one can pretend they don't know what was happening. The reaction was immediate and intense. Before 8 in the morning, Richard's phone began ringing incessantly. They were journalists, authorities, restaurant employees, all wanting to know more details. Mr. Morgan? It was Megan, the restaurant manager. Did you see the report on television? I did, Megan. Did you really do all that? Confronted criminals to save the girl? I did what any decent person would do, Megan. But, sir, the phones here won't stop ringing. Journalists, customers, everyone wants to talk to you. What should I say? Say that I'm fine, that Emma is safe, and that I'll return to the restaurant soon. Carl also called emotional. Mr. Richard, I'm so proud of you. Is the girl Emma okay? Tell her I miss her. She's fine, Carl, and I'm sure she misses you too. But not all the reactions were positive. At 10 in the morning, Edward called with a worried tone. Richard, you need to leave the hotel. Now. Why? They've discovered where you are. There are armed men at the reception asking about you. Richard felt his blood freeze. Are you sure? Absolutely. Andrea is also being threatened. They won't simply accept the exposure. Where do we go? Remember the abandoned building where you lived? Go there. It's the last place they'll look. Richard quickly woke Hannah and Emma. We have to go. Now. What's happening? Asked Hannah, still sleepy. They've discovered where we are. Hannah got up quickly, gathering the few things they had. Emma, wake up, daughter. We have to go to our old home. To the building, Mummy? Emma rubbed her eyes. Are we going to live there again? For now, yes, said Hannah, trying not to show fear. They left the hotel through the back, using the emergency exit. Richard had left his car in the underground garage, hoping it hadn't been identified. They managed to leave without being seen, but they knew time was running out. The abandoned building in the historic downtown had never seemed so welcoming. Hannah and Emma knew every corner, every hiding place. They settled in the basement, where there was a small improvised apartment that Hannah had set up. Mr. Richard, you won't like living here, said Emma, concerned. It doesn't have the beautiful things you're used to. Emma, the only beautiful place is where you and your mother are, replied Richard, hugging the girl. Beautiful things are just things. Family is what matters. Hannah was moved by the response. Richard, are you sure you want to stay with us? Your life will completely change. My life has already changed, Hannah. Since the day Emma appeared at the door of my restaurant, there's no going back. Meanwhile, outside, the city was buzzing with the revelations from the report. Demonstrations began to form in front of the homes of the politicians involved. Parents of missing children appeared at police stations demanding investigations. The pressure on the authorities was growing. Andrea Morris, hidden in a safe house, continued receiving more information. People who had been silenced for years began to speak, encouraged by the initial report. Edward, are you receiving this? She called the investigator. What? More reports. Dozens of them. This is much bigger than we imagined. What's the situation of our protégés? Richard, Hannah, and Emma are safe for now, but there are arrest warrants being prepared against them. Arrest warrants? Why? Kidnapping, criminal association, slander. They're using the entire legal apparatus to silence them. Edward cursed. I'll warn Richard. In the basement of the abandoned building, Richard received Edward's call with growing concern. Arrest warrants? For saving children? They have judges in the scheme, Richard. They'll use the law against you. How long can we stay hidden? Not long. But I have a plan. What? We're going to turn ourselves in. What do you mean? We're going to turn ourselves in publicly, in front of the press. We're going to force them to arrest us in front of the entire city. Hannah, who was listening to the conversation, nodded. Edward is right. If we hide, they can make up any version. But if we turn ourselves in publicly, the entire city will witness. But what if they arrest us anyway? Then we'll go to prison as heroes, not as criminals, said Hannah with determination. Emma, who was also listening, approached Richard. Mr. Richard, I don't want you to go to prison because of me. Emma, I won't let them hurt you again, no matter what happens to me. But I need you. Who will teach me about France? Richard knelt in front of the girl. Emma, you're the bravest person I know. You offered work in exchange for food when you were hungry. You maintained your dignity even in the worst situation. You taught me that being rich isn't having money, it's having people you love. I love you too, said Emma, hugging Richard tightly. Then let's fight together. Let's show this city that justice can win. Edward called again. People, decide quickly. Andrea has managed to arrange a press conference for 3 in the afternoon. You'll turn yourselves in there in front of everyone. Where will it be? Asked Richard. In Union Square. Andrea is mobilizing all the national press. Let's go, said Hannah. It's our chance. They spent the next few hours preparing. Hannah organized all the original documents that remained, making backup copies. Richard called Carl at the restaurant, explaining the situation. Mr. Richard, you're a hero, said Carl. The entire team here is rooting for you. Carl, if something happens to me, you take care of the restaurant, okay? Nothing will happen to you. God protects the just. Emma was quieter than usual, processing everything that was happening. Mummy, what if they separate us again? They won't separate us, daughter. Now the whole world knows the truth. Will Mr. Richard stay with us? Yes, little one, said Richard. I promise I won't leave you alone again. At 2 in the afternoon, they left the abandoned building for the last time. Richard looked around at that place that had temporarily become his home and felt a strange nostalgia. There, in that improvised space, he had discovered what family really meant. Union Square was packed. There were journalists from all over the country, television cameras, curious onlookers, protesters. Andrea Morris was in the center, organizing the press conference as if it were a military operation. Richard, she waved when she saw them approaching. Are you ready? Ready, replied Richard, holding Emma's hand firmly. Remember, speak the truth, show the documents, don't show fear. The whole United States is watching. When Richard, Hannah, and Emma appeared in the square, there was a murmur in the crowd. Cameras turned to them. Flashes went off. Emma shrank a little, but Richard reassured her. It's all right, little one. These people are here to help us. Andrea began the conference explaining the whole situation. Then she passed the word to Hannah, who told her version of the facts with impressive courage. I discovered that innocent children were being exploited by powerful people, said Hannah, holding the microphone with firm hands. I tried to report it, but I was silenced. My daughter was kidnapped and taken to a terrible place. If it weren't for Richard Morgan, I might never have seen Emma again. Miss Hannah, asked a journalist, do you have proof of what you're saying? I do. Hannah showed the folder with the documents. Names, addresses, financial records, everything is here. Richard also spoke, telling how he had met Emma and how she had transformed his life. Her 6-year-old girl taught me that true wealth is not in material possessions, but in the capacity to help others. Mr. Morgan, asked another journalist, aren't you afraid of the consequences of what you did? I'm more afraid of the consequences of not having done anything, replied Richard. If staying silent in the face of injustice makes me a coward, then I prefer to be a brave criminal. The crowd applauded. There were people crying, others shouting words of support. Emma observed everything with wide eyes. "Emma," said Andrea, bending down to the girl's height, "can you say something to the people?" Emma looked at Richard, who nodded encouragingly. She approached the microphone with shyness. "I just wanted to work," she said with her sweet voice. "I was hungry and offered to wash dishes. Mr. Richard gave me food and taught me beautiful things. He said I could visit France one day." "Do you still want to visit France, Emma?" asked Andrea. "Yes, I do. And I want to learn how to make gold designs on plates. But now I have a family. I have my mum and I have Mr. Richard." "What is Richard to you?" "He's my father in my heart," said Emma, smiling at Richard. "He saved me." The phrase echoed through the square and was broadcast to the entire country. "He's my father in my heart." Richard felt his eyes water. Never had a declaration touched his heart so deeply. It was at that moment that the police arrived. They came in patrol cars surrounding the square. The detective in charge approached with arrest warrants in hand. "Richard Morgan, Hannah Summers, you're under arrest for criminal association, kidnapping and slander," announced the detective. The crowd began to boo. Cries of shame echoed through the square. Journalists filmed everything, narrating the surreal scene of people being arrested for saving children. "Don't take my mom," shouted Emma, clinging to Hannah. "Don't take my dad," she shouted again, this time clinging to Richard. The image of the girl defending her adoptive parents was broadcast live to the entire country. People in the square began to protest more intensely. "Leave them alone," someone shouted from the crowd. "Arrest the real criminals," shouted another. The detective, visibly uncomfortable with the situation, tried to do his duty. "Mr. Morgan, you have to come with us." "I will," said Richard calmly. "But I want everyone to see. I'm being arrested for saving a child." "I will too," said Hannah. "I'm being arrested for reporting crimes against children." "And me?" asked Emma. "Where will I stay?" "You'll stay with people who will take care of you," said the detective without conviction. "No," shouted Emma. "I want to stay with my family." It was then that Carl, the restaurant chef, approached. "Detective, can I stay with the girl?" "Who are you?" "I'm an employee of Mr. Morgan. I've known Emma for months. I can take care of her until this situation resolves itself." Richard looked at Carl with gratitude. "Thank you, my friend." "No need to thank me, Mr. Richard. It's the least I can do." The handcuffs were placed on Richard and Hannah under the camera flashes and the shouts of the crowd. Emma was crying, but Carl consoled her. "Uncle Carl, will they come back?" asked Emma. "Yes, little one. Good people always come back." When Richard and Hannah were taken to the police station, something extraordinary happened. The crowd began to follow them, singing and shouting words of support. Cars honked. People came out of their homes to see what was happening. At the police station, dozens of volunteer lawyers offered to defend Richard and Hannah. Journalists remained outside, broadcasting everything live. The hashtag Freedom for Richard became one of the most shared in the country. "Richard," said Hannah in the cell, "do you regret anything?" "Nothing," replied Richard. "Emma taught me that doing the right thing sometimes hurts, but it's always worth it. Even if we stay in prison. Even if we stay in prison. At least Emma is safe. At least the world knows the truth." Outside in the square, Andrea Morris continued receiving more reports. People who had been silenced for years found courage to speak. The corruption network was being unmasked in real time. "Edward," she called the investigator, "are you seeing the news?" "I am. This is turning into a revolution. Representatives are resigning. Judges are being removed. The scandal is bigger than we imagined." "And Richard and Hannah?" "Arrested, but they've become national symbols. People are holding a vigil in front of the police station. And the children from the farm? Rescued. All 87 children who were there have been freed. Thank God. Edward, I think we did it. I think we really managed to bring down the entire network." That night, Emma slept at Carl's house dreaming of gold plates and of France. She didn't know yet, but her courage and the courage of her family had changed the lives of hundreds of children. Richard and Hannah, each in their cell, also dreamed. They dreamed of a future where no child would need to offer work in exchange for food, where no mother would be silenced for defending her children. The entire country was watching, and waiting for true justice to prevail. The popular pressure was so intense that the next morning the judge responsible for the case felt obligated to grant provisional freedom to Richard and Hannah. Outside the police station, hundreds of people waited with posters and flowers. When the doors opened and they appeared, it was as if two heroes were being released. "Richard! Hannah!" people shouted, applauding and crying with emotion. Emma was in the front row, being held by Carl. When she saw Richard and Hannah coming out, she ran toward them. "Dad, Mum!" she shouted, using the word Dad for the first time to refer to Richard. The embrace of the three, broadcast live on television, became one of the most striking images in the country's recent history. A family formed by the most unlikely circumstances, united by love and justice. "My daughter," said Richard, hugging Emma tightly. "I missed you so much." "I knew you would come back," said Emma, smiling through tears. "Uncle Carl told me that good people always come back." "And we came back to stay," said Hannah, completing the family embrace. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Official investigations began to confirm all the allegations Hannah had made. Representatives were arrested, judges were removed, businessmen were indicted. The farm in Riverdale was closed and transformed into a genuine recovery center for children. August Ferris, the farm owner, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The fake social workers were unmasked as recruiters for the criminal network. The doctor responsible for keeping Hannah drugged had his license revoked and was also arrested. "Richard," said Edward during one of his visits, "do you have any idea what you've accomplished? More than 300 children have been freed across the country. The scheme was much bigger than we imagined." "And now what happens to these children?" asked Richard. "Many have returned to their families. Others are in real shelters being properly cared for. Some—" Edward smiled. "Some have found adoptive families through people who were inspired by your story." "That's good," said Hannah. "All the suffering was worth it." "Mommy," said Emma, who was listening to the conversation, "does that mean other children also found fathers in their hearts?" "Yes, it does, daughter. Many children found families who love them." "That's good," Emma smiled. "Everyone deserves to have a family." Richard looked at the girl with pride. Even after everything she had been through, she continued thinking of others. Her generosity and empathy remained intact. "Emma," said Richard, "I have a surprise for you." "What surprise?" "Do you remember you always talked about France? About plates with gold designs?" "I remember." "Well, I found an art school here in New York that teaches French techniques for porcelain decoration. Would you like to learn?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? I'll learn how to make gold designs?" "Yes, you will. And you know what else? When you grow up, if you still want to, we'll visit France together. The three of us. Together? Together. Our family." Emma jumped into Richard's lap, radiant with happiness. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, daughter." Hannah observed the scene with tears in her eyes. Months ago, she was being silenced in a psychiatric clinic, drugged and isolated. Emma was being exploited on a farm in the countryside. Richard was living an empty life, focused only on profits and meetings. Now the three formed a true family, united by something stronger than blood ties, love, respect, and common purpose. "Richard," said Hannah, "what are we going to do now? With the restaurant? With our lives?" Richard had already thought about this. "I have an idea. How about transforming the garden?" "How so?" "Instead of a luxury restaurant for the few, what about a community center for many? We keep the kitchen, but serve free meals for those who need them. We create classrooms, workshops, a place where children like Emma can learn and grow." "Will that work financially?" asked Hannah. "I don't know, but I have enough savings to sustain it for a while, and I'm sure many people will want to help." "I want to help," said Emma. "I can teach other children how to wash dishes properly." Richard and Hannah laughed. "Of course you can, daughter. You'll be our head instructor." The transformation of the garden restaurant began immediately. Richard sold his other businesses and invested everything in the project. Hannah used her experience as a social worker to coordinate social programs. Emma became the mascot of the place, helping to receive other children and teaching the cleaning techniques she had learned. "Look," Emma would say to a new girl, "you have to hold the plate like this. Move the cloth in circles. My dad taught me." "Does your dad work here?" "He's the owner. But before he was the owner, he was my friend. He gave me food when I was hungry. He seems nice. He's the best dad in the world, and you know what else? He said that when I grow up, We'll visit France together. Megan, the former manager, initially resisted the changes. Mr. Morgan, this isn't a restaurant anymore, it's a mess. It's a family, Megan, and families are sometimes noisy. But the profits... Megan, have you seen how many children have a smile on their face here? Have you seen how many families are being helped? That's worth more than all the profit in the world. Megan looked around and saw children playing, learning, laughing. She saw mothers receiving guidance on labor rights. She saw fathers learning to cook for their families. Slowly, she began to understand. You know something, Mr. Morgan. I think you're right. This is more important than money. Welcome to the family, Megan. Carl, the chef, adapted perfectly to the new concept. Mr. Richard, I've never cooked with such satisfaction. Knowing that this food goes to those who really need it, that gives it a special flavor. Carl, you've always been special. Now you're just using your talent in the right way. And little Emma, each day she gets smarter. Yesterday she helped me make a new sauce. She has talent for the kitchen. She has talent for life, Carl. She taught me that true wealth isn't in what we possess, but in what we share. 6 months after the transformation, the former garden restaurant had become the Emma Community Center, a reference in social assistance in New York. It received more than 200 children per day, offered professional courses for adults, and served more than 500 free meals daily. Dad, said Emma on one of the first days of porcelain decoration class, I can make a gold design just like the ones on French plates. Show me, said Richard, sitting beside his daughter. Emma, now 7 years old, had grown and become a confident and articulate girl. She still maintained her characteristic gentleness and empathy, but now had the security of someone who knew she was loved. See? It looks just like the plates from the old restaurant, she said, showing a plate decorated with a gold fillet. It's perfect, daughter. You really have talent. Dad, when we go to France, will I show the French people how to do this? Of course you will. But do you know what's more important? What? That you're already using your talent to make people's lives more beautiful, just like these plates. Emma smiled and hugged Richard. Dad, do you think if I hadn't offered to wash dishes that day, none of this would have happened? I don't know, daughter, but I know you had the courage to ask for help in the right way, with dignity. Mommy always said we shouldn't be ashamed to work. Your mom is very wise, and so are you. Dad, can I ask you a question? Of course. Are you happy now? Richard stopped what he was doing and looked around. He saw Hannah organizing a meeting with mothers of children served by the center. He saw Carl teaching a group of teenagers how to cook. He saw dozens of children playing, learning, smiling. You know, Emma, I was rich before I met you. I had a lot of money, expensive cars, a luxurious apartment, but I wasn't happy. And now I have less money, but I have you and your mother. I have the satisfaction of knowing I'm making a difference in people's lives. I have a real family. So you're happy. I'm the happiest man in the world. Emma smiled and went back to concentrating on her plate. Dad, do you think other children can also find fathers in their hearts? I'm sure they can, daughter. Love always finds a way. That's good. Everyone deserves to have a family. Richard hugged Emma, feeling a deep gratitude for everything that had happened. A 6-year-old girl with bare feet and an empty stomach had completely transformed his life. She had taught him that true wealth wasn't in accumulating, but in sharing. Emma, said Richard, thank you. For what, Dad? For teaching me what really matters in life. Oh, Dad, said Emma, laughing, you taught me. You taught me that there are good people in the world. You taught me that family isn't just who is born together, but who chooses to stay together. We chose to stay together. Forever, said Emma, hugging Richard tightly. You, me, and Mommy. Forever. That night, when the center had already closed, Richard, Hannah, and Emma sat together in what was once the main dining room of the restaurant. Now it was an activity room with small tables where children did homework and participated in workshops. Richard, said Hannah, do you have any idea how many lives changed because of Emma? Not just because of her, because of the three of us. Together. Dad, said Emma, can I tell you a secret? Of course. I knew you were special from the first day. How did you know? Because you didn't look at me like other adults did. You looked inside me. And what did you see in my gaze? That you were also hungry. Not for food, but for something. and that we could both help each other. Hannah and Richard looked at each other, impressed by the girl's wisdom. "You were right, daughter," said Richard. "You fed my soul." "And you gave me a family," said Emma. "Now we're both full." "Full of love," completed Hannah, joining the embrace. There in that space that once served sophisticated dishes for a few, but now served hope for many, the family formed by the most unlikely circumstances celebrated their most important victory, having proven that love can overcome any adversity. Emma would grow up and become a renowned artist, specializing in French porcelain decoration. She would visit France, as she had always dreamed, but would always return home, to the Emma Community Center, where it all began. Hannah would become one of the most respected social workers in the country, helping to create stricter laws to protect vulnerable children. Richard would discover that true wealth is not measured in figures, but in smiles, hugs, and the certainty that his life made a difference in the lives of others. And it all began with a 6-year-old girl who offered work in exchange for food, maintaining her dignity even in the greatest difficulty. Love, dignity, and courage had won. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Richard, Hannah, and Emma has touched you deeply. This journey shows us that true wealth is not in what we possess, but in what we share, and that the strongest families are those formed by love, not just by blood. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here, clicking to your left. If this story has inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique narratives that explore the complexity and beauty of human life. Don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you in the comments to know what you thought of this transformation journey. Until the next story.